Hello everyone, my name is Jenny Breen. I am a chef and a culinary nutrition educator. I live in Minneapolis and work in the Twin Cities, and I also work with organizations across the state like Sprout. And I am excited to be working with Sprout on doing some culinary nutrition education for folks who are receiving CSA shares. There's so much fun, exciting, interesting, delicious stuff that you can do with what you're getting in your boxes. And there's also a lot of really great stuff that you can learn about the nutritional value of some of those ingredients, and also the folks who produce and grow those ingredients and why it matters to have more of a connection between those things, between the people who are producing and growing your food, the people who are getting that food to you, and the quality of that food and how good it is for us and for the planet. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of the ingredients that I think are in your box this week or possibly next. You are getting basil, fresh basil. You will have some kale. You will have some sunflower oil, and I want to talk a little bit about why high quality fats are so important. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And there's a few other ingredients that you won't necessarily get in your box, but I'm going to use to create a basil kale pesto, and then give you some great ideas about what you can do with that. A little bit before that, so in addition to those three things, the kale, the basil, and the sunflower oil, I'm also using sunflower seeds for this pesto. I'm using garlic or garlic scapes. So garlic scapes are the top of the garlic plant that are in season and available right now for a short time before they're over. Otherwise, you can use fresh garlic, which isn't necessarily in season right now, but it's readily available. And of course, salt. So those are all the ingredients that are going to go into this pesto. A little bit more about sunflower oil and quality fats in general, because I think this is such an important topic. So this is actually Smude sunflower oil. I just have it in a different jar. But first of all, the sunflower oil that you're getting is locally grown, which is pretty awesome. So it's a naturally occurring fat that is extracted from a local plant that is being raised not far from where you are. What's important about that is the fact that it's a naturally occurring oil. The oil that is in the bottle is naturally extracted from that plant. So something like a nut or a seed has a lot of natural fat in it, right? And when you press it or spin it somehow to extract that oil, you're getting the oil naturally out of that seed or nut, as opposed to the way a lot of oil is extracted, which is through chemicals or through heat, which changes the chemical makeup of that oil and makes it really toxic for your body. So when you see something like a corn oil or a vegetable oil, it's pretty likely that that's how that oil has been drawn from that plant, because that oil isn't really naturally occurring in that plant, so they have to mess with it. And as much as possible, we want to stick with things that come from nature the way that nature created it. What's also really great about this fat, this high quality naturally occurring fat, is that it's really good for us and really important for our health. In addition to adding flavor, which is one really important characteristic of fat, whether it's fat that we get from oil or whether it's fat that we get from meat or dairy, it also creates satiety, makes us satisfied. And that's important because then we don't overconsume what we're eating because it satisfies us. So we get enough because of that high quality fat that we don't need to eat a lot of it. I know when I was young, I always thought that fat made you fat, but that's not actually true. Fat's really important for us to be satisfied so that we don't consume the highly processed foods that actually do make us fat. It's also really, really important for absorbing fat-soluble vitamins. So the vitamin K that's in this kale or any other leafy greens is most easily absorbed when we eat it with fat. And so this pesto is like a perfect combination of the fat and the fat soluble vitamins and the nutrients and the iron and the calcium most easily absorbed by our body. And the other thing I would say is that it's really important just for sustaining energy. Again, that high quality naturally occurring fat keeps us going for a long period of time, where something that's really highly processed or really not naturally occurring is not going to sustain us in the same way. So for all those reasons, this sunflower oil is really excellent, and not to mention you're supporting a local farmer and keeping your local economy alive, which is another really wonderful thing about Sprout. So the pesto is pretty easy. I'm using this little food processor, and I'm basically just going to throw everything in together. And I'm going to open up one of these garlic cloves and throw it in. And I'm also going to kind of cut up one of these scapes. I'll make sure you can see me. And always, I like to remind people about good knife technique. You want to hold your knife firmly, have a good sharp knife. Use the tip of the knife and just rock gently back and forth without lifting your knife up or moving around very much. And that should make it really easy. You can put your hand on top of your knife, or you can hold what you're cutting with fingers carefully curled. Either way, you want to definitely use good technique. So I've got my garlic in there. I've got my basil. I'm going to pull the leaves off the tough stems of the basil. If the stems are small and tender, I wouldn't worry about it. And so this is kind of a combination between a traditional pesto and a more modern pesto. You can use, honestly, any herbs. You can use any leafy greens like spinach or arugula. You can use any nuts or seeds. I'm using sunflower seeds because they're inexpensive. They can be found locally. They're, again, a high quality fat, and they really taste really good in this. But walnuts, almonds, pecans. Traditionally, pesto has been made with pine nuts, which is a more expensive nut, but if you have those or you enjoy them, use those. So those are going in, and definitely don't forget your oil. And again, you can adjust that a little bit. You can make it a thick, more spreadable pesto, or you can make it a thinner, more pourable pesto. That's also up to you. And don't forget your salt. Just like high quality fat, salt is really, really necessary for us. And as long as we're cooking our own food and adding it ourselves, we really can't eat too much of it. So I've got all of that in there. It's gonna be loud. Oh, I forgot my kale. Pulling the stem off the kale, you can kind of rip it up with your hand if you want to make it a little smaller, but this is pretty soft and tender because it's very fresh. I just got it from the market, but you want to kind of get it in smaller pieces. And then, so what I've got, and the reason I could tell I didn't have the kale in there is because it wasn't quite green enough. What I've got now is this just really wonderful sort of very green, very herbaceous, very fresh, kind of crunchy. I can get those nuts and seeds really, really fine, or I can leave them with a little bit of texture. That's also up to you. I'm gonna do it one more time. And there we go. So I've got this wonderful pesto, and now what to do with it? Well, you've probably had pesto on pasta, which is a really traditional way to have it. It's really delicious really on anything starchy because it's so rich and oily, so it balances really well with pasta or rice or potatoes. I think it's really good on any vegetables, so hope you enjoy.